I finished chapter 64. Let's catch up. So Dalinar gave Kaladin land because he's a bright lord, essentially. He's a light eyes with a shard blade, like kind of a big deal. But he has his own land now, so that's pretty cool. But then we go to Thalena, and the place is wrecked. It kind of reminds me a lot of Florida after a hurricane, where like just buildings are destroyed, and it looks like an Everstorm went through, which is wild. But Taravangian was there, and all of the people are like wounded and sick, and he's like weeping, and he's like, "Please let me just bring my surgeons here, and like we can help." And Dalinar's just like, "What a gem." Okay, so listen, my question is, did he really mean that? Like, were those real tears, or was he just like manipulating them? Because we know he's not a nice guy. So I'm interested to see where that goes. And then Queen Fen is like giving them a tour, and her son is just being like a little shit. And then she's like, "I gotta go handle some business." And then Dalinar's like, "You want to do this?" And just takes his shirt off and is like, "Yeah, let's do this." I love this. I love this. Because listen, some people, they don't understand anything outside of, a little bit of an Irish discussion. And I love that Dalinar's like, "Yeah, let's do this. You want to get some anger out? Come on now." And then he's like, "You know what? Let's make it interesting. You're armed. I'm not. Let's see what happens." And then he lets himself get stabbed in the chest. I was like, "Oh, shit." He's going for it. And then her son is like, freaking out, and he's like, "Come here," and pulls like alerts from Lord of the Rings and just like pulls the sword in, and he's like, "Oh shit." Dalinar pulls it out, heals himself, and immediately is like, "Oh damn, I can't just be going around saying I'm stronger than everybody, can I?" I love Dalinar so much. So then he hears a bunch of screaming saying, "Unite us," and it's actually Spren that were like in the building, and he's able to like patch up the building, which is kind of cool. Didn't know he could do that. So he was able to do that. He called Renarin in because Renarin can heal people, which is pretty neat. So then the next chapter, Shallan and the team, she disguises everybody, and she turns Adolin and Kaladin into old men and Elhokar into a woman, and she makes Kaladin like hideous to look at. Incredible. And I love that Michael Kramer, when he does the sort of old man Kaladin voice, I just loved it. And he's like, "Oh my," and he caught his reflection, he's like, "Oh god." She goes, "Yeah, pretty good, huh?" Love it. But the Spren there and Kholinar are all like wrong. They're like distorted or like mutated Spren, and there's like a parade of people dressed as different kinds of Spren. That was kind of wild. And then apparently the fused are like collecting fabrials. Like if anyone uses a fabrial, the fused show up and they just take them. So I don't know what's going on with that. That's a little weird. And also, I don't know why, but Elhokar being like, "Hey, Kaladin, you need to get my family out of here if shit goes sideways." That makes me feel like Elhokar's not walking out of here. I'm just saying, shit is sideways in Kholinar right now, and Elhokar is kind of the king. So I don't know if sending the king to a place that is basically taken over by Odium, I'm assuming, I don't know if that's a good place for him to be. But anyway, so there are people dressed as Spren. And Shallan is like pulling a Yasna and like running experiments as she goes and like stabbing herself in the leg to be like, okay, the pain Spren are weird here. And then she's like tripping and falling. Goes, all right, shame Spren are also kind of weird here. Just trying it out. But then and this is kind of where Shallan can sometimes confuse the shit out of me. Because I don't want to say she's crazy, because that is diminutive, and I don't mean to use that word in this situation. But Shallan disguises herself as Vale, and then Vale disguises herself as Lyn. What am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do? Anyway, so she does that. She goes up to the Oath Gate, and the Oath Gate is being guarded by, like, cultists. And she's like, "Hey, I got a letter that's for the queen." And they're like, "Really?" She goes, "No, it's really important that, I give it to her." And they just stab her, and then, like, that's it? And just go back to work? What is going on in Kholinar? And does Elhokar's wife know about this? Is this an Odium fused Voidbringer type thing? Or is this a Elhokar's wife is secretly a terrible tyrant and not just a degenerate. I don't know, but that was wild. So then he just takes her body over his shoulder, and he's dragging her, and he's carrying her basically to where he throws all the other bodies that he's stacked up over the day, I guess. But she catches a reflection in a mirror, and it was like a shadowy figure that had white eyes, and it looked at her and was like surprised. What is that? What is that? What is going on in Kholinar? That's my question. And also, oof. I don't know why. But I'll be very surprised if Elhokar makes it out of this. Because, listen, you got Adel in there, you got Khalid in there, you got Shallan there. That's a lot of main characters to be there with Elhokar in a city that he has literally no power over currently. I don't know what's going on. We'll see what happens.